What's up, guys? How are we doing? My name's Cody Luongo, and just give me a brief moment because I'm hearing. Hello, testing, testing. Okay, I was hearing insanely backed up audio on my ear. What's up, guys? Oh, all right. We might have to take a technical pause right now because wild echo. This is like the worst start that we could ever possibly have to a show. Everything I'm saying. All right, well, you know what? I'm taking the headset and I'm doing this OG style because that's what I do, guys. Well, what's up? Welcome to the Reload Podcast. All right, I'm putting it up. I just got the thumbs up. Hello, hello. Okay, everything sounds good. Allow me to reintroduce myself. My name is Cody Luongo, guys. Welcome to the Reload Podcast, produced by UGC and obviously fueled by Hotspawn Esports. Now, today, we're talking CS as we always do, and you're just blessed by my presence today. We don't have the Bears in the house, unfortunately, but he will be here next week, and our special guest, which I'll preview at the end of the show. But we do have news topics to touch on. One very unfortunate story about a player in the Christchurch shooting that was killed, that was actually found out to be a former Counter-Strike professional. We'll go into a little bit of that. Wendigo winning the WESG Finals. Who would have thought that? Certainly not me. Config and Yugi reported to go to C9. Also big news. More touches on the economy update, what we're seeing. They've added features to the losing bonus and kind of how that's working its way into the competitive meta right now. Obviously, the DreamHack Dallas closed qualifiers have been announced, so we'll get into that, who's invited. And most importantly, the pinnacle of the show, the precipice of what we were talking about, is the Blast Pro Series Sao Paulo 2019 tournaments. We'll get into who's going to be there, who's doing what, and follow all of that stories as the day progresses, as the show goes on. I need to get a little loosened up here, all right? Forgive me, guys. But first off, let's kick up with what's in the news today, and obviously a very, very heart-wrenching story. Everyone has heard about the Christchurch shooting in New Zealand. Absolutely traumatic, horrible event where the deadly attack was carried out there, and we've actually put together a story from you here talking about one CS player who was discovered to be one of those that was murdered in the attacks in Christchurch. So if we can roll this clip for you, we'll go ahead and kind of break this down. So again, referencing the Christchurch shooting, the deadly attacks, there was about 50 killed and many wounded in the shooting. But there was one individual named Ada, crazy Arab Lion. And this was a 33-year-old Kuwait-born New Zealander who was obviously, again, one of those that was taken out in the shooting. But we actually did a deep dive into this individual's career and found out that he was a former professional CS player in New Zealand. So at the time, you know, he was 33 years old, Kuwait-born, as I said, and his earliest roots in CS stretch back to 2002, where he was participating in small lands at Canterbury University. And though Lion failed to be inducted into these professional CS teams at the start of his career, he decided to migrate to Source during the time in which there was a large divide between the two games, right, and the two competitive communities, 1.6 and Source, obviously. And that was something that went on for quite a long time. But his decision to do so, however, gave him an early lead in the competitive scene. And after parting ways with his former 1.6 clan, Lion went on to join a team called New Type, right? And he joined this team alongside Grudge, Atvar, Supertech, just super old school names. And they would end up being a powerhouse team in New Zealand. And they dominated in the Oceanic region, in the early years of Source. Now, with most of New Zealand's top CS talent tied up with 1.6, New Type had taken reins over the Source scene, toppling Australia's finest team on a routine basis. And at that time, Xland was New Zealand's premier tournament, and New Type was practically unstoppable. They won several titles in convincing fashion. In 2008, Lion had decided to step away from competitive CS, and he wasn't able to sustain this level of play that he needed to keep up with the rest while juggling his education. Here you could see a picture of him with his team, New Type, at an Xland, I do believe. Finding a lot of this information was obviously, took a deep dive into New Zealander gaming forums, right? Because this was around 2006 to 2008. And in 2009, he actually did play. He tried to come back, but the team was just so broken up by then. But, nonetheless, it's a very interesting story. It's incredibly sad to hear about the devastating attacks in general, but to hear that one of the players was a former professional CS player. But one thing that I want to bring up is that Lion went on to have this super successful career as a user interface designer, working for a few companies, eventually co-founding his own media solutions company called Lazy Worms App. And after finding great success in the tech industry, Lion still referenced Counter-Strike as having a heavy hand in his later endeavors. And he said, and I quote, "I never thought I would ever be in a position to say this. However, I actually owe a lot to CS. I would have never gotten into the tech industry had I not been obsessed with gaming during those years, and the hours of focus, intense gameplay, and desire to succeed has actually helped me a lot in many aspects of my life." And that's a hard story to talk about, honestly, and it was one that was difficult to research. And I won't try to lull on the negatives of that particular story, but it is one that's important and one that we wanted to touch on and respect. And obviously, you don't think a lot about the when you hear about one of these mass slangs. You think about the number, the statistic. A lot of people reference that, but you never actually get to touch on the individuals' lives that were lost. So obviously, rest in peace. And there are charities to donate to a Lion. You can find actually a link to that on Hotspawn.com. The article that talks about his life a little bit more in depth and his career in CS. So definitely check that out. But on to some other news. We have Wendigo winning WESG. They walked away with $500,000, and this was a tournament with the likes of Fnatic, MIBR, G2. It did have ENCE who backed out of it, and I do believe NIP was supposed to be at the tournament. They weren't there either, but nonetheless, Wendigo went on to win this. They played in the grand finals against Ago. Ships led the pack in this series. He had 75 kills in a best of 3. It did go the distance. Just a great tournament to watch in terms of the final. I know there was a bit of a stipulation with the seeding itself at the front. I don't know what Electronic Sports Games was really thinking there when they pitted a couple groups of death and a couple groups of fluff, rather, is what I'll say. But nonetheless, kudos to Wendigo there on that point. And another interesting report we have is Config and Yugi reported to go to Cloud9, and this actually story develops into something a little bit more interesting. Now, you got Config and Yugi, right? Key Opper, another key fragger in Config, just critical parts to the Optic Gaming roster. And now they're being talked about going to C9 potentially. This was reported by HLTV, and this would make the C9 roster automatic rush golden. Config and Yugi, obviously that's what they're thinking. The future of Optic itself with Refresh and Co. is a little uncertain at this time because we can't really tell what the organization would do. However, Jake Lucky of Esports Talk was on his Twitter this morning, and he mentioned that Kiyoshima is said to remain on C9, so that would therefore make this roster irrelevant that they're talking about moving to Optic Gaming, or from Optic Gaming to C9, because Kyo would stay in theory, so C9 could retain their major spot. So we don't know at this point really what the story is. You know, usually when you get these reports of players transferring, most of the time it's true and it's accurate. However, when there's conflicting info, such as the incident with ENCE and them discussing potential roster changes, now there wasn't any specific players that were mentioned in that case, but nonetheless, you know, the CEO jumped in and said, "No, we're not actually doing this." I digress. The economy update has been changed. They introduced it so that you can now see the opponent's losing bonus, right? So now you're not, here we go, proper, right there on the screen. Yep, in the right-hand side, I'm having a squint right now for my preview, but you can actually see the losing bonus right there. It actually tells you now, so now players are not having to kind of dissect this intensive math scenario where you're trying to factor how many wins they have versus what their losing bonus is standing at, and so on and so forth. So that makes that process a little bit easier. The economy update is one that people are obviously having a lot of, what's the word? I guess trouble wrapping their head around. It's been integrated now. So I think this upcoming tournament at Blast Pro Series is going to give us a lot of insights, into how this economy is actually going to factor into the meta, what it's going to be doing exactly, and how players are going to adapt to that. I think the feature of adding what the opponent's losing bonus is maybe, I mean, it's a positive thing because it made the economy, figuring out your opponent's economy much more intensive, right? But now with that, it's a little bit more easy. You could actually visibly just see the losing bonus that they're getting, so you can anticipate what their buy is going to be like, and obviously adjust accordingly. So, again, we'll probably get our best sights at that at Blast Pro Series this weekend in Sao Paulo. But yeah, it's one that we're gonna have to just wait and kind of see how that unfolds. I'm sorry if I'm a little jumbled, guys. I'm sipping my first coffee of the day. I was a little tired. Now I'm a little excited, needless to say. And now we have the DreamHack Dallas closed qualifiers that were announced. Tony on the graphics supremely. So let's just break this down from the top. You have from the Europe section in the qualifiers, you have a Vanguard G2 Big, Wendigo, who just won WSG, Valiance & Co. also had a lot of strong showings recently, and Hellraisers, who have switched up their roster quite a bit. So right there is a pretty stacked lineup in the upper group. In the middle there, you have Ghost Gaming, Furia, who was at one of the favorites in a way, or the fan favorite at IM Katowice. Complexity has been on the rise. Nothing is playing, nothing is doing nothing things. Jordan Gilbert. And E United, which is in this mixed kind of weird lull right now. We don't actually know too much about E United, what's going on with them exactly. And then Brazil, South America, you have Brazil, Shark Esports, Imperial, and teams of that nature. So you can kind of estimate what this is going to be like. This is going to be a pretty tight qualifier series, I think. Homegrown Hicks 1v1 in the chat. Shout out, what's up, my man? Yeah, again, we're going to see what that tournament's going to be like. That is, we're going to have 16 world-class teams. There's still invites that have yet to be announced, and you have $250K in prizing. That's going on May 31st to June 2nd. And now, obviously, we'll kind of break down the big tournament that's ahead this weekend, which is Blast Pro Series in Sao Paulo. Baby, I would love to go there and just see it myself, but let's go ahead and just get into the teams, what we're expecting right now. You have Astralis, obviously the favorites. I feel like every tournament we're breaking down, we're trying to come up with ideas of why Astralis would falter. That was about 4 or 5 months ago. We're starting to think like, all right, maybe this is the tournament. They're playing away from home, and in this case, MIBR is the crowd favorite. Maybe that'll play into it. But barring their consistency, you just can't make an argument against this team. And with that consistency, you're talking about the repeated success that they've had, obviously, and then that distance that the team separates themselves with, right? They have maintained such a healthy distance ahead of their international competition that you cannot argue with them. You cannot argue against them. And teams that have been playing catch up for the last 5, 6, 7 months, it's not getting any closer. That margin is not narrowing at all. So all things considered, Astralis is probably going to win this tournament. They have investments, or there is some sort of business aspect behind that with Blast Pro Series. They're connected to them in that way. Yeah, what else can you say? The team just gets better and better and better. They're coming off IM Katowice first place finish where they actually rocked the house. And I'm going in on this team. I'm believing them all the way. Then obviously you have MIBR, so the team has now Taco back in the mix. They have their coach, why am I blanking on his name? Zeus is back here coaching the team. Obviously he was with Liquid as with Taco, and you have this full Portuguese Brazilian roster, the same roster that formed SK Gaming back in the day, the one that won multiple majors and was almost, before I could say this, but they were almost an Astralis of their time, right? Not quite on that level, but still MIBR, they were a fearsome team in around the year of 2017, that season specifically. But when we talk about recently, right, at IM Katowice, they made it to the semifinals, faltered in that sense, and you just weren't getting that level. You want to see a team like this get on the scene, you want to see them explode, and you want to see them run at the game, run at the teams like Astralis and Liquid, and just, play that fierce, aggressive, fiery Brazilian style of gameplay, right? That free-flowing sort of style that Fallen and Taco, Coldzera like to play. But then we talk about WESG and their performance there. You have them bowing out of that tournament early. They lost to Wendigo, who granted were the winners of that tournament, but they lost in the quarterfinals. You would expect that MIBR would go ahead and win that game. Again, they're coming off Katowice, Poland, time changes, this and that, makes things a little bit complicated. But again, now they're going from China to Brazil. So maybe it is a sense of this team kind of overworking themselves in a way. You think of a team like Astralis who removes themselves from tournaments in between. They take the breaks, they take the time off, they take the time to kind of readjust themselves, realign themselves, stay rested, and all of that. And that's in part due to the brilliance of their coach Zonic, right, who maintains that health as a primary aspect of this game and keeping that mental health and staying rested. If you're tired, you're not playing well. It's like when you get on, you start gaming. Your first couple of hour or two of gaming is hot, and then as you start to get tired, you start to play bad. You start to miss those headshots. You're just choking, man. So MIBR now, when I think of that and think of them, just the travel that they've had in the last 2-3 weeks alone, now going to Sao Paulo to play, that kind of makes me think that maybe MIBR is not going to perform as we want them, despite them being the hometown heroes. If they do make it to the grand final, that match is going to be insane because we know the Brazilians, we know they're passionate, we know everything about that, right? So that grand final is going to be just an absolute stunner to watch. Assuming they do make it, MIBR, you don't know. Home field advantage is a big thing in CS. You know what I mean? When you got the crowd behind you and all that, sort of feeling that gameplay, and which actually will segue into my next point, which is a team that I've always maintained plays off the energy in the room, and that's Team Liquid, right? Liquid, they have their new roster, right? They have Dren coaching, and they also have Stewie 2K, who's been proven to be a phenomenal addition to this team. We saw him at IM Katowice. That was like our first glimpse of this new Liquid squad, and they were on fire at the start of the tournament, and it was staged to be a Liquid Astralis grand final. They played Ents in the first round, and despite that, everyone still thought, there's no way this is not going to be an Astralis and Liquid grand final. Needless to say, Liquid faltered to the hands of Ents, who made it to the grand finals. And it was one of those classic scenarios where they crumbled. They put down a 10-round deficit that Ents had that they came back and won. Pardon me? Ents comes back from a 10-round deficit. How do you let that happen? How? It's the classic Liquid. It's the Liquid curse they have. And something that me and Taberza talked about in the previous episode last week when he was on was that Liquid is at a battle with themselves, right? It feels like this is like this mental roadblock where they're on the big stage, all their eyes are on them, and they're not themselves. Something happens. It's so hard to say. It's like they get sloppy or they don't play up to their potential, because Liquid is a team that, especially when you consider players like Naf and Elijah, they're such masterminds of the games, the way they think, and they make those game-breaking plays. Like, they are playmakers, and those are critical in round deciders. But something happens. You lose that at a point in Liquid when they're on the big stage. So regarding their prospect in Blast Pro Series Sao Paulo, well, yeah, they have a lot of competition ahead of them. They have Astralis, MIBR, Ents, again, FaZe, in NIP. I want to say, though, if Liquid can come out and play the way they have a shot at top 2. And if they play against Astralis and they can sort of suppress that, then I think Liquid can match Astralis on any day when they're playing at their pinnacle. If Liquid is playing at their premier, this is the best version of Liquid we have, and they maintain that through an entire series, it's a dead even with Astralis in my mind. Just about, But then again, when Astralis is playing at their best of the best, which seems like all the time, they're also the greatest team in the world. Moving on to a team called Ents, the Finnish technicians. Ents, such a strategic team. There's so much formula to their gameplay. This is the way these guys think. They mesh so well. They're so motivated, driven. If you haven't watched that Ents documentary, definitely go back and check that out because it's super insightful into just how this team functions, how they think, how they, a lot of just, behind the scenes general CS stuff. But again, Ents this is a team that crawled through the qualifiers to the challenger stage, to the legend stage, and then the champion stage at IEM Katowice. And then they went past Liquid, and then they went past Navi, which was one of the most exciting games that we had seen thus far in the tournament. It was one of the most exciting series, 2-1 Ents. And you almost thought, maybe, I was thinking certainly, because I think the playstyles clash between them and Astralis. It's a very methodical level of play. And so I'm sitting there thinking, maybe Ents could do this against Astralis. Didn't even come close. But Ents is a team that certainly deserves the recognition. They deserve the placing right now. I think they're placed in the top 10 in the world on HLTV. More than fair. I think that's, Ents just shot up the rankings, and we saw that potential with them from the Star Series and I-League Season 6 tournament last season. But now they're sort of come into themselves, and now they've found themselves at this tournament. And this is another area. This is a proving ground for Ents, and I believe that these players probably realize that. They don't want to seem like a flash in the pan. Not that a team that could crawl again from the qualifiers to the grand finals could be seen as something like that. I think Renegades was maybe a little bit. But Ents has just come too far. They've built so much. I don't see this as a team that's going to just bow out and fall out and just not show up to this event. I think that they'll at least get top 4. But, I would be surprised if less, but I would also be surprised if they made it into the grand finals. Talking about FaZe, right? FaZe is a team that I think, I'll speak for myself, but probably a lot of other people in saying that we've been unimpressed with them for the last couple of years, the last couple of months. You think back to the London Major when there was those problems with Nico and Kerrigan, Nico picking up the IGL role in the tournament. And it's just this lackluster, weak FaZe. I mean, we're talking about FaZe Clan, major winners, star players. Olaf Meister has attended every major in CSGO history. I mean, the accolades and the pedigree of this team, the intelligence, the skill, everything combined, you think, how could a team like this be placing the way they do and performing the way that they are? And there's just seems to be no rhyme or reason right now as to why that's like that. Right now, obviously, they're fielding a stand-in in place of Kerrigan, who's a Dren, and they mentioned that they're going to double down on this player for now. They said he's here with us for the foreseeable future, and he's going to rock with the team, and they're going to figure it out. So I think FaZe is another interesting team to look out for at this tournament, because sometimes they show up, sometimes they don't. But we'll be on the lookout for them. And again, I don't know where to place FaZe. Like, my heart says that top 5. Like, I don't believe them to get. I believe they could be in the top 3, but I think that's probably the best they're going to get in this stage at this form. If they've gotten the grand finals and played, if they won, I would be absolutely devastated. But if they got into the grand finals alone, I would be impressed. I would think that that's performing above what they are at right now, and I think that's a more than fair statement. Talk about the ninjas, right? These guys. Put down a couple words to describe them and their performances recently, and I think that they're lackluster, weak, and they're non-threatening. I mean, I'm watching them at the Katowice Major at the quarterfinals against Astralis. It was 15-1. And Forrest gets up and beckons to the crowd, yeah, we got our first round win. And it's just like, come on, you guys are NIP. You were a legendary organization, one of the most storied organizations in CSGO. How have you let yourself fall so far? But it has been a while since NIP has been at the top, right? And I think that in the larger scheme of things, in the last 4 or 5 months, we've seen more appearances from them. So this is a team that I thought was improving at the end of 2018, or towards that. But now I'm not really sure. Obviously, Dennis is taking a personal break, and he's being stood in by Draken. Draken has been on the team for 10 days now, so that leaves very short time to practice, needless to say. Nip, I'm not really expecting this. This is more like a throw tournament for me in my eyes for them. So, again, we will kind of see where it goes from there. But let's move into the fun stuff. Or I'm sorry, let me just wrap up this Sao Paulo preview I'm going to give some predictions right now. And maybe a little reasoning by that, because that's a good way to end a preview, right? Astralis, number 1 easily. Okay, that's what I'm going for. Liquid in second place. I really believe it's going to be them two in the grand finals. If Liquid crumble again, which is it's a crapshoot, I'm just rolling the dice on them because I want them to do well. I am a Liquid fan. I want to see NA do well in general. And I do believe in this team. I believe in the roster. I think Stewie brings a lot to the mix and kind of mends these two worlds in terms of creativity, firepower, and just leadership, and just making them a well-rounded and formidable squad. So I'm going Liquid too. I'm going to say MIBR in third. I would also be happy to see them in the grand final because that's always exciting, seeing the hometown heroes in there. I think that MIBR is on the come up. They've progressed a lot in such little time since the roster shuffle over the player break. So I think barring just the progression that they've shown, kind of getting back in the swing of things, I think that MIBR has an ability to perform well. Barring, again, they just got back from China at the WESG, did not perform that well. They're probably a little winded, tired from that. But so I'm going to say they're top 3. Fourth, I want to say Ents. I'm going with Ents here. I think they're going to go over FaZe, and then NIP is dead last, which is actually the way I have it propped up in the rundown. Moving on, let's talk of our Hotspawn play of the week. It's that time of the week, guys. Powered by Hotspawn. It's a clip by NBK. Scout, Mastery, 4 shots, 4 headshots with the Scout. Let's roll it. You guys think of that? 4 shots, 4 headshots with the Scout, NBK. Vitality itself this team is, I'm so excited about this team. I don't really even know how to put it into words right now. The addition of Zaiwu, who's thought to be the next Simple, right? So talented. The leadership of NBK, he's a veteran player in general. You notice their Twitter as well. I think they're getting close to announcing something as well. They're doing this weird status % thing. Check that out. If you throw a couple guesses as to what you think in the chat, throw it at me. But that's our Hotspawn play of the week, and huge shout out to them as always. Moving into the last bit right now, we've got our banter of the week. Yes, every week we like to talk a little bit about some CS banter. Maybe it's a funny clip. Maybe it's a funny discussion or notion in the scene right now. We'll go ahead and pull this clip up for you right now. Let's see it. This is a clip I pulled off Reddit, as you can see. Just looking at the bomb, guarding it with the snipe. And little pop-up of the head. Takes one to the head. Watch that one more time for sure. Just funny in both perspectives that a man would come up and actually try to pull that off in a game. Choose that. But coming back, we also have one clip that we did pull at the end of... right before the show, right? Because this one popped up on Twitter. It's of Rain trying to kick some object in what looks like an arcade bar and absolutely eating it. Let's go ahead and run that real fast. Take a look at this, guys. Can we run that again? Let's get that one more time real fast. Look at this one. Good form, honestly. I mean, just... I think that's Olaf Meister's Snapchat. What is he trying to kick? I don't know. Great form, though, from Rain. You saw he was going for a solid kick. I did play soccer, for those of you that are wondering, growing up. But needless to say, it's some good quality stuff there. All All right, guys, that is going to do it for this episode of Reload Podcast. If you watch, thank you so much always for joining in. Homegrown Hicks, huge shout out to you guys. Everyone, we're here live Thursday at 2 p.m. Central, produced by UGC Events, fueled by Hotspawn Esports. Next week, I'm joined back by Eric DeBeer-Stromberg, and also a special guest coming from Counterlogic Gaming Red, Benita, who just won the WESG female tournament finals this past weekend in China. So we're gonna be really excited to have her on the show, ask her some good questions, and it should be a good time. So needless to say, I'm out of here, guys. Thank you so much for watching. As always, my name's Cody Luongo. See you next week.